Hey there, good evening, everyone. So, welcome to the book review session. And today's book is the very popular book, popular self help book, popular business book, whatever you want to call it. It is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I must tell you that I have read very few books in my lifetime prior to this year. And one of the books that I really read fully was How to Win Friends and Influence People some 30 years ago, and it stayed on for me for quite some time, and the principles somehow stuck on with me, and I started following it in my life. But when I revisited it for the sake of this review, it was totally different. With a totally different eyes I could look at it. And I must tell you that this book is a must read for each and every one, whether they're in corporate job, whether they're in a sales role or not in a sales role, whether they're an entrepreneur. Everyone needs to read this book. And this is an eye opener for everyone. Okay, so let me just share my live stream with my, yeah, so that's it. So you can see the my mind map here. I'll just start the slide. So this book, written by Dale Carnegie, was somewhere, I think, 1937. Okay, 1936-37. It's a very old book. It's undergone multiple editions, and the best part is this book was like a textbook which Dale Carnegie utilized it for implementing it for his students, and giving them a lot of value in terms of practical inputs. Because one of the important things in life is whether your skills or your knowledge in your area of expertise, it might be the best, but unless you are able to handle human emotions, interactions, and are able to get along with people, it's a very difficult path for many, right? So this is the single most criteria for anyone to be successful: having understanding of human interactions, of communication, and being able to relate to people and have the empathy towards them, and be able to get along with them. And that's one of the important skills for a leader as well, right? So Dale Carnegie has himself made a lot of changes to this book over the years, and after his passing on also, a lot of people have added a lot of value to this book. And this book is a practical book, action oriented book for each one of us to read, delve deep, and implement it in our lives. Okay, so let's get started. So Dale Carnegie, he's an American writer and has developed courses in self-improvement, salesmanship, public speaking, and many other life skills. And his background is actually, he was born into poverty. He actually was in a farm in Missouri with his parents, and he became a massively successful writer and a teacher later on in his life. So basically, his early days were with struggle, a lot of struggle. For even getting formal education, he had a lot of struggle. And then when he couldn't continue his education, he looked for a job. And then when he traveled also for the job, he had to find various means to make it happen. It was very difficult and tough journey for him. In fact, his books now are all about how changing ourselves can help to change others, and how to make an impact on other people's lives, how to make a difference to other people's lives through your skill of communication, your skill of empathy, of understanding people and helping them. Okay. So the famous professor William James of Harvard, he said, compared to what we ought to be, we are only half awake. Very interesting perspective, right? That means what he's trying to say is that humans have got huge potential, and we are just living up to a small portion of that potential. Just imagine what can happen if we can rise up to our full potential. I think that's what is the endeavor of most of the people that are living today in this day and age, because it's shifted from existential to something more meaningful for a lot of people. Okay, so we're making use of only a small part of our physical and mental resources. We humans thus live far within our limits. We possess powers of various sorts which we habitually fail to use. Okay, and this book is about helping us discover, develop, and profit by those dormant and unused assets which are there in the physical realm as well as in the mental realm and in the spiritual realm as well. So education, as Dr. John Hibbins said, the former president of Princeton University, he said, is the ability to meet our life's expectations and situations. Okay, education is the ability to meet life's situations and the expectation that we have from life. So that is the actual definition of education, right? So now, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehives. This is one of the very, very prominent philosophies in this book. That means if you want to get something done, if you want to get something done from a situation or from a person, there is no point in being harsh on them. And that's what he's meant by this metaphor. He says, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. And to give illustrate further about this, he said, why not begin with yourself? One of the underlying principle of this section of the book was that if you are trying to constantly look at flaws in others, trying to improve others, giving them inputs for them to improve, and not focusing on yourself, then it's actually an exercise in vain. He says that why not begin with yourself? From a purely selfish standpoint, he says that is a lot more profitable than trying to improve others and a lot less dangerous. So, see, the author says that try and begin the charity at home. Try to improve yourself first. Forget about improving others. First, start with beginning to improve yourself. And then no one will change if you criticize them. In fact, quite often when you criticize someone, they will actively get worse. He's given a lot of examples, okay, practical examples. In fact, he's given a beautiful example of one Crowley, who was captured and declared as one of the most dangerous criminals in the history of New York. And the commissioner said he will kill at the drop of a feather. In fact, this person was so notorious, even before his capture, of just a few hours prior to that or a few days prior to that, he actually killed a cop in cold blood, just a cold blood murder. The cop came to him for his license plate, when he was driving the car, and he just took out his gun and just, pumped him with bullets. So he was so ruthless. But look at this part, okay? When he died, they found his letter, which he had addressed to whomsoever it may concern, and he's written, "Under my coat is a very heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." So the reason why the author has given us this example is, even a notorious criminal, in his heart, in his belief, in his self-belief or self-image, he thinks that he's a very noble person. He just cannot get himself to think that he's someone notorious or a harm to the people or the public. He thinks that he thinks that he's absolutely noble and he means no harm. And the author has given a lot of examples in this book where he talks about so many people who were actually, according to the perception and people's perception because of the activities that they did, was that they were very bad in terms of their society and the behavior in the society and all of that. But their self-belief was absolutely contrary to what people would perceive them as. So what the author is trying to say is that even the most notorious person cannot get himself or herself to believe that they are bad. So what is the point in criticizing someone? Because they will all try to preserve and defend themselves if you're trying to criticize them. And the normal person will definitely not be accepting of the fact that they have been, some fault is there in them or something like that, right? So there's no point in criticizing anyone. That's what the author is saying. And he gives another example, which is like how to utilize this knowledge in practical application. Okay, so he gives the example of Bob Hoover. He was a famous test pilot, and he was a frequent performer at air shows. And he was returning home, flying back home in Los Angeles, and he says at 300 feet in the air, both his airplane engines stopped. Not car engine, airplane engine stopped. By deft maneuvering, he managed to just about land. And so just imagine, this gentleman would have been like really, really upset, right? Hoover's first act after emergency landing was to inspect the aeroplane's fuel, just as he had suspected. The World War II propeller plane he had been flying had been fueled with jet fuel rather than gasoline. So the fuel that needed to go into that airplane was wrongly filled. Upon returning to the airport, he asked to see the mechanic who had serviced his aeroplane. The young man was sick with the agony of his mistake. In fact, the person who has done the servicing of that airplane before its takeoff, he was like sick with agony. Oh no, my goodness, now what's going to happen to me? Maybe like gone. Tears streamed on his face as Hoover approached. He had just caused the loss of a very expensive plane and could have caused the loss of 3 lives as well. So you can imagine Hoover's anger, right? One could anticipate the tongue lashing that this proud and precise pilot would unleash for that carelessness. But you know what Hoover did? But Hoover didn't scold the mechanic. He didn't even criticize him. Instead, he put his big arm around him and then said, sure, to show you, I'm sure that you will never do this again. I want you to service my F-51 tomorrow. So he said, I am sure you'll never repeat this. He didn't admonish him. He didn't criticize him. He didn't ask him any questions. He said, I'm sure you realize, because the thought is very clear, right? I'm sure he's realized, right? So he says, I'm sure you will never do this again. And I want you to service my F-51 tomorrow. So just look at the mindset of Hoover and what would have gone through this poor mechanic's mind. He would have been expecting the worst in his life, and then this thing happened. So I'm sure he will never make that mistake again, right? And such a nice way of handling it, right, by Hoover. So fundamental techniques in handling people is this: give honest and sincere appreciation. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Arouse in the other person an eager want, a want for them to excel in their work or excel in whatever they're doing. Let them feel that urge that they should be better. They should not make the mistake. They should be perfect or improving constantly. Let them get that urge from within. If you can arouse that urge, then that is something which is totally commendable quality that you have. In fact, the author has given in books multiple examples of people like Andrew Carnegie, who was actually the person who commissioned Napoleon Hill to write the book Think and Grow Rich, right? So Andrew Carnegie was one of the biggest industrialists of that era in USA. And Andrew Carnegie, he was not formally educated as such, and this gentleman had this quality in him to arouse that people's inner intrinsic thing in them to excel in whatever they're doing. He's to get out the best in people, it seems, right? So a lot of principles have been borrowed from the successful people of those times. And the best part is this book acted as a practical means for Dale Carnegie to train people. So he used to encourage his students to understand the principle, implement it, share the experience of theirs in the classroom, and then he's to further improve his the thought process around these philosophies. And it's just like a practical book for you to massively take action and see for yourself how it works for you. I'm sure it will work wonders. Each of these principles are like pearls of wisdom. Okay, so the big secret while dealing with people, okay, and this is the secret. What he says is that this point is very important, very, very, very important. I can't stress enough. He says human beings crave for these few things, okay? Health and preservation of life, food, sleep, money and things money will buy, life in the hereafter, sexual gratification, the well-being of our children, and a feeling of importance. And he says among these 8 points, by far the most important and the one that people really crave for, in fact, he's given a lot of quotes of people, and he says that person, one of the quotes that he's talked about, he talks about craving. He doesn't talk about desire, or wanting. It's like craving. It's like craving is much more deeper than wanting or desire, right? Desiring. It's like crave. I want it, craving, right? He says the craving of that feeling of importance that we need to have as human beings is the most important thing that is there in every human being. And that's what differentiates us from animals. In fact, I've written the next point. William James said that the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. That craving to be feeling important. Okay, the desire for a feeling of importance is one of the chief distinguishing differences between mankind and animals. In fact, this desire for a feeling of importance that led an uneducated, poverty stricken grocery clerk to study some law books he found at the bottom of a barrel in a household plunder that he had bought for 50 cents. And you probably have heard of this grocery clerk. It is Abraham Lincoln. So it's that desire in people that makes them achieve that desire, that feeling of importance, that feeling, that craving of wanting to be appreciated. Okay, now we'll come in the later part of this book. He comes to how that understanding of what is it that people are looking for can help us to communicate better and relate with people better so that they will be willing to do anything for us. And the framework of this book is such, he doesn't talk of all of these as techniques or something for you to get something out of people. It's purely from the very very altruistic point of view, okay, that you are doing certain things initially with the idea of getting something out of that as a result, but eventually things, those qualities and those no, the way of dealing with people becomes second nature to you. And it is no longer a facade. It's actually, you really feel for people. When you feel for people and when you do it, it doesn't feel like a facade. It's not a facade at all. It's something like from genuine, from inside, right? And people will relate to it. And those days and even these days, people are very smart. If it's a facade, they can very clearly make it out. Okay, all these books, all these learning from people like Dale Carnegie are just helping us to grow as a human being, as a person. Okay, and when you look at it from that spirit, that point of view, and you can also feel the authors in a genuine interest to help us to get and grow, get those ideas and grow. So then he says that how you get your feeling of importance can tell you what you are. He says that determines your character. John D. Rockefeller, the industrialist, the famous industrialist, got his feeling of importance by giving money to erect a modern hospital in China to care for millions of poor people. Dillinger, on the other hand, he's actually a notorious robber, I believe, got his feeling of importance by being a bandit, a bank robber, and a killer. In fact, he gives practical examples of how some of these notorious robbers, bandits, they would barge into someone's house and say that they will not harm anyone, but they'll proudly announce that I am so and so, I am Dillinger, I am the Dillinger, right? So all of this, it gives people the identity, that feeling of importance. And that's why some people might go to the extreme of helping, being valuable, impactful in life, and some people might go to the extreme of harming others. Okay, so another beautiful example, a very very positive example that is given in the book is a teacher in Detroit asked Stevie Morris to help her find a mouse, okay, in the classroom, lost in the classroom. You see, she appreciated the fact that nature had given Stevie something no one else in the room had. Nature had given Stevie a remarkable pair of ears to compensate for his blind eyes. But this was really the first time Stevie had been shown appreciation for those talented ears. Years later, he says that this act of appreciation by the teacher was the beginning of a new life. From that time on, he developed his gift for hearing and went on to become none other than Stevie Wonder, one of the greatest pop singers and songwriters of the 70s. Just imagine, one note of appreciation can just transform people's lives. So it is so powerful. Just look at the essence of the thing, that understanding human psychology, understanding what is it that people are looking for, can help you to really deliver that to them and maybe transform their life, change the trajectory of their life itself. So beautiful. So and then he says that give honest and sincere appreciation, and it should not be a facade. It should not be like a very very superficial thing. And Emerson said, every man I meet is my superior in some way. Everyone has got some quality in them which is superior to the best of people. Like Emerson is saying this, okay, in that I learn of him. He says that quality I learn from him, he says. If that is true of Emerson, isn't it likely to be 1,000 times more true for you and me? This is what the author is asking us. Let's cease thinking of our accomplishments, our wants, let's try to figure out what the other person's good points are. Then forget flattery. Give honest, sincere appreciation. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. And people will cherish your words and treasure them and repeat them over a lifetime. They will repeat them years after you have forgotten them and years after you have gone as well. Okay. So, honest and sincere appreciation, he says, that's what we all want, isn't it? Being a human is hard. We all deserve some appreciation sometime. This simple tip is probably worth reading the entire book for. Okay, now I'll tell you this. Which tip he says? He said, how much better would your relationship be if you looked for the best in people? How much further ahead would you be if you, instead of putting people down, you actively pulled people up? Very, very nice. Very, very powerful thought, right? So, how to win people to your way of thinking? Some bullet points are captured here. The only way to get the best out of an argument is to avoid it. Don't have an argument. Show respect for the other person's opinion. Never say you're wrong. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Begin in a friendly way. Get the other person to say yes, yes immediately. So try to paraphrase your statements in such a way that they say yes, yes. Okay. Let the other person do a great deal of talking. Try not dominate the talking. Ensure that you can give them a chance to talk. Let them talk, because people love to talk about themselves, about their opinions and all of that, right? So let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. Even if there are chances that you might feel that this idea is not that person's, it's yours, give them the credit. There's nothing wrong. There's no harm in that. Just give them the credit. That's what Dale Carnegie says. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. Appeal to the nobler motives. Always appeal to the nobler motives of people, because everyone has got a noble side to them. Appeal to that nobler, higher motives of them. And then he says, throw down a challenge. That is, when you throw a challenge at people, they want to achieve that. Instead of throwing it like a hurdle, throw it like a challenge, which is going to be like something which they also want to achieve, and they would feel much more accomplished at having done that. Okay, so that's what is the part of this book. And then he says, be a leader. How to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. Okay, now let me just change the format so that you get to see a little bit more of these slides. 1 minute, let me share it. Okay, I'll come back to this. How to be a leader. Perfect. Let me shift it to this mode. How to be a leader. So in this part, what he says is that people actually respond to praise and honest appreciation. They do not want any criticism as such. If you start with praise and honest appreciation, immediately their antennas will be up. They will want to be more receptive to you. He says, call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Don't be very blatant about the mistakes that you're pointing out. If you have to point it out, point it indirectly. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Let the other person save face. Praise the slightest improvements. Be hearty in your appreciation and lavish in your praises. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. That means, like if you give them this kind of appreciation where you say that I know that you are the best speaker in the world. I know that you are very, very honest and you are very, very stickler to being honest. In fact, to the extent that even if it sounds very bland or very, very too blatant and honest, you are okay to do that because you do not want to err and make people feel that you're being dishonest. So you want to be like out of the way. You want to go and make it known that you're honest, right? And you're really honest, right? So give them a reputation for which they will feel that I want to live up to that reputation. And he says to make the other person happy about doing the things that you suggest them to do. Okay, let them feel from within that I want to do this for this, and I want to do this. I enjoy this. Okay, let them get that feeling. So then, some of the golden rules that has been shared here are this. He says that according to the scriptures And even according to a lot of popular cultures, it says it is not new. It's an old as history. It says Zoroaster taught to his followers in Persia 2,500 years ago. Confucius in China preached 24 centuries ago. Buddha preached it on the banks of the Holy Ganges 500 years before Christ. The sacred books of Hinduism taught it for thousands of years before that. Jesus taught it and summed it up in one thought. He says, "Do unto others as you would have others do unto you." Okay. And this has been said by so many philosophers and gurus over the years, thousands of years, they've said this. Okay. And you want the approval of those with whom you come in contact. You want recognition of their true worth. You want a feeling that you are important in your little world. You don't want to listen to cheap, insincere flattery. Okay. But what you really crave is sincere appreciation. So no flattery. There's no need of flattery. Just be honest and sincere appreciation. In fact, in the book, he's given a beautiful example of someone. He goes with his spouse, with his wife, to one of her relatives' place, and this old lady has got a beautiful house, and the spouse actually tells the husband, "You be here. I just catch up with some of my other relatives." So she goes off to meet some other relatives of her age group, because this lady is quite old, and she's her relative. So the husband stays back. And so what he does is he just looks around and he finds the house very, very beautiful. It's quite an old house, and it's been tastefully decorated and been tastefully designed as well. So he talks about that, highlights that to the lady, and the lady is so happy. She says, "You have got a good taste even, right? Young man, you've got a good taste." And she leads him to the garage and she shows him her car. And she says, "My husband gifted this to me just before dying." Okay. And she says, "I have not used this car since." And she says, "I would like to give this to you. I want to give this to you." So this gentleman says, "No, it's not fair on me to take it. In fact, you're not even related to me. I'm sure there are so many of your relatives who would want and love this to have this car. You gift it to them, please. I don't want to have this." He tried his best to wriggle out of the situation and not take the car, but she insisted. And then he felt that, it'll be too harsh on her if he says no and he declines it. So he had to accept it. So the old lady was actually looking for that small appreciation, which made a difference to her. And this gentleman did with all sincerity. With all sincerity, with all true and truism. It was nothing. There's no facade in that. She really felt that way, and he openly shared that with her. Right. So let's obey the golden rule and give unto others that which we would like to have, and have others give unto us. How, when, where? The answer is all the time, everywhere. Beautiful, isn't it? And so then he says that it comes down to the following, when what they taught us. So how can we go about living this rule to the fullest? Start with asking yourself how you would like to be treated. What kind of respect would you like to be shown? How would you like to be spoken to? What would you like to feel valued in? Okay. So when you look at all these aspects, you'll be able to accordingly frame your behavior with others in such a way that you can get the best out of them. You'll be able to appreciate the honest things, the things that are really commendable in those other people. Now, so 6 ways to make people like you. First one, become genuinely interested in other people. Second one, smile. Because he's talked a lot on smile. He says, smile genuinely from your heart, and people will reciprocate it very, very well. Remember that a person's name is that person's sweetest and the most important sound in any language. Take their names when you're talking to them, conversing with them. Take their names often. They'll feel good about it. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Talk in terms of other person's interest. Okay. He's given another example, beautiful, of an industrialist. I think it was the HP founder. Okay. He says that this gentleman, HP founder, wanted to set up a theater or something for the public, and this gentleman was selling these seats. Wanted to propose that the chairman of the company buy the theater seats from him. And the person who took him there, the architect, he said that it this the gentleman, he's very very senior and he will not give you more than a few seconds to talk. So please be very very to the point, concise, and make your point, and we can step out fast. Okay, he will not give you a long time. So when this gentleman went in, he noticed that the office was beautiful, and he also had seen that the furniture and the woodwork had been done very tastefully. So he complimented the chairman about the woodwork and the quality of the wood chosen, because this person also had a very good understanding of the woodwork, of the wood quality of wood and all of that. So the chairman immediately liked it. He said, in fact, this wood has been personally chosen by one of my very close friends, who's a very dear friend, and he's an authority on choice of wood, the kinds of wood, the quality of wood. And I've personally supervised all these carvings and all these setup in the office, the furniture and the stuff in the office, and I love it. In fact, it reminds me that I do not give enough attention to it these days because I'm caught up in my day-to-day work, and I fail to admire it. Now that I brought it up, yeah, it's really good, and I'm really proud of it. And then he's end up spending 1.5 hours with this gentleman and invited him to his home as well. He says, my home is upstairs. I would like you to have a lunch with me. And sure enough, he got the order, right? So that's secondary. So when you're genuine interest in people, when you're genuinely complimenting people, and you're trying to be a good listener and trying to look at from the other person's perspective, it makes a huge difference to your life and their lives as well. Okay, so make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. I think this book is one of the amazing books which everyone has to read, and this is a book which will make a difference to a lot of people's lives, irrespective of your background, like I said. And for me, when I'm revisiting this book after I think close to 30 years now, okay, close to 30 years, it's like it's a huge eye opener, and I recommend it to all my team members as well. And I actually sent a few SMSs messages before I went live. This book is a must read for everyone. In fact, make your children read, let them also read, and this book is a must read. Once you have your human interactions taken care of, just imagine what kind of space we'll be living in. No? The world will be a much much more pleasant place where we understand each other's mindset. We look at what is it that makes people tick, what is it that people really crave for, and if you can give that to them, you and them and the society at large is in a much better space. So with that, I would like to end this review. There are a lot of important and interesting tidbits beyond this as well. I would encourage you to read this book and go for it, and encourage all your family members, your relatives, friends, and your associates to read this book. All the very best to you. God bless. Take care. Hi, welcome to my new live series where I'm going to be reviewing some of the must-read books. Self-education is known to make us a fortune, right? Right. Okay, you're the average of 5 people that you hang out with, right? Absolutely right. Let me be very frank with you. My self-image with regards to my reading abilities until the beginning of 2021 was nothing much to feel proud of. But something changed in me during January 2021. 2 people influenced me hugely to take to reading. From an average of 1 book a year, I have been able to do justice to an average of 2 to 3 books per month. Pretty good, right? I figured that self-education in the formats of reading great books and being coached by some of the great mentors are 2 of the fastest ways and best ways to grow exponentially. Reading and being open to being coached also helps us with the law of 5 people averages. You get access and time to some of the best and greatest thought leaders of this generation. I am Satish Rao. I am an abundance crusader, vlogger, online and network marketer. I am doing this live book review session to share my insights from some of these amazing books that are relevant to each and everyone among us who is committed and passionate about creating abundance in all areas of our lives. See you all soon.